Jalle stood alone at the far edge of the lower docks, where the fishing platform hung beneath Amashiro Village in blue-gray mist before sunrise. The rope and plank construction was still slick with night dew, and he looked not down at the water but out toward the distant shape of the collector's relay island, a black sliver against the first pale stripe of horizon. His hands lay flat on the railing, neither gripping nor resting. The village above was entirely silent. A single gull tracked past below him, because the clouds hung that close, that full, the air layered and slow. The dock lanterns had burned down to their last quarter. He had been standing there long enough that the dew had settled on his shoulders, and he did not move. 6 days, he thought, reading his own situation the way a man reads a document he wrote himself and finds every word correct and every conclusion terrible. The collector's reader traveled by survey wind, which meant she rode the easterly channel, 6 days, and she would stand where Ossian had stood and see not a disgraced surveyor's curiosity, but a pattern. Drainage angles, load distributions, a filter built by someone who knew what filters were. She would read the village the way a hunter reads a trail, and every warm thing he had made would be a footprint pointing here. He exhaled, and his breath fogged. I was so careful never to be seen helping, he admitted to himself, the thought coming out smaller than he expected. And I helped anyway, every single time. In Nuri Tumachi's kitchen, the first real light of morning came through the east-facing paper screens. Nuri worked a clay pot at the stove with the calm of someone who had made this porridge 10,000 times, but she had set out 5 bowls instead of 4, and she was pretending not to notice she had done it. Steam moved through the room in slow columns. Dried herbs hung bundled at the ceiling, and a cat that belonged to no one sat on the sill. The 5th bowl rested on the left side of the table, slightly apart, and Nuri did not look at it. A footstep sounded on the stair, and Tomo appeared in the doorway, his hair compressed sideways from sleep, his tunic on backwards. "Is there an emergency?" he asked, groggy but already alert, like a lamp that needed 1 second to reach full brightness. "Or is it just porridge?" "Sit down, Tomo," Nuri said warmly, not turning around. "Both, then," he murmured, reading something in her tone he could not yet name. He sat and looked at the 5 bowls, then at Nuri's back, and decided not to ask. 3 weeks earlier, he would already have been talking. Now he let the question form and set it aside. The door opened and Sora entered, already dressed, her ledger under one arm. She saw the 5 bowls at once and said nothing, taking the seat across from Tomo. Neither spoke, but both had counted. "The collector's courier arrived on Pemlin Island yesterday," Sora reported, her voice precise and professional. Ossian's contact confirmed it at the night bell. Nuri's stirring did not change its rhythm. This was how she received terrible news. "Pemlin is 6 days by easterly," she said, measured as a tide. 5 if she rides the mid-channel draft. Sarah's voice dropped, hating its own precision. "There is apparently a reader with her, not a courier. A reader." A silence settled, and then nothing followed it. "What's a reader?" Tomo asked carefully. "Someone the collector sends to assess irregular villages," Sarah answered, flat and clinical, the way she delivered things that hurt. "They look for unauthorized improvement, infrastructure that exceeds the village's taxation tier. It triggers reclassification. Reclassification means we stop being a Tier 3 outpost and become a Tier 1 extraction site," Nuri said, choosing the least alarming accurate words. "The fishing quota doubles, the grain levy applies, the head woman is replaced by an appointed administrator." She set the pot down, turned, and looked at Tomo directly. "It means everything we built in the last 2 months becomes evidence against us." By then, Jalle had moved to the village square, sitting on the edge of the old stone well that no longer worked. The new one stood 30 meters away, fed by the reoriented drainage. Ossian sat beside him with a folded map across both their knees, weighted at its corners by a rice bowl, a compass, a small fish, and his own thumb. A stick of surveyor's chalk rode behind his ear. He waited for Jalle to speak first, having learned that Jalle thought better when not performed at. "Show me what you'll see," Jalle said, stating a fact rather than asking. "The drainage regrade is the loudest," Ossian replied without drama, pointing with the chalk. "No Tier 3 village self-corrects water flow. That reads immediately as outside intervention. The granary reinforcement is second. The joinery pattern, I recognized it, Jalle. It is not an archipelago pattern. It is not from anywhere a Tier 3 fishing village touches." Jalle absorbed this without moving. "How long have you known the joinery was foreign?" The self-deprecating reflex rose in Ossian, and then, with a small exhale, he set it aside and said the true thing. 3 weeks after you did it, I said nothing because it was good work, and I was more interested in what you'd do next than in what reporting it would cost us both. That is the most honest thing you've said to me, Jalle observed quietly. I am practicing, Ossian said, with a small rueful sound almost like a laugh. Then Jalle returned to the urgent thing. What can be undone in 5 days? The drainage cannot be undone. Reversing it causes flooding, and flooding draws more attention than the grade does. The granary joinery, we could panel over it, but new panels read as concealment to a trained reader, which is almost worse. The filter beneath the east dock is the most defensible because it is the least visible, but Jalle. He paused. She will find the other things. A reader does not come to be satisfied. She comes to find. By late morning, the kitchen had shifted into warmer, more honest light, and all 5 of them gathered around Nuri's table. The porridge bowls were empty. Someone had set out tea without announcing it, and the 5th bowl had been quietly collected. There was grace in how unremarked it all was. 5 people in a crisis, and someone had made porridge and poured tea. I need to say what this is, Jalle began with the surgical honesty of a man delivering a situation report. The things I built here, I built because they needed building. I told myself small was safe, and then I made things that were not small. And now there is a reader coming who is very good at her job. And what she finds will reclassify this village in a way none of you can survive intact. He did not look away from any of them. The usual deflection did not arrive. What are you saying? Sora asked, watching for the evasion that did not come. I am saying this is my fault, specifically and traceable, and I don't know how to fix it cleanly. Tomo uncurled from his chair and set both feet on the floor. So what do we do? That should be Sora or your mother, who— Jalle. Nuri's single word landed in the room with little force and total authority, and he stopped. Her face held something gentler and more final than anger. We have sat at this table all season and watched you leave through the back of every room the moment someone might ask you to stand in it. I am not asking because you owe us. I am asking because no one else can see the whole picture. And we are out of time for modesty. Sora's hand rested on her closed ledger. The reader arrives in 5 days, she said, the crack in her armor going into the precision of her words. We have never survived a reclassification review. 2 villages on the southern chain were reclassified 4 years ago. They are not the same. She did not finish the thought. She did not need to. Then here's what I know, Jalle said. And his voice held something new, the sound of a man arriving in a room he had been running from. He laid out the map not as a performance, but as an offering. The reader will use the drainage as her centerpiece. If we cannot undo it, we reframe it. There is a precedent in the old collective charter for what is called beneficial tidal adaptation, which allows Tier 3 villages to undertake drainage work if it can be attributed to observed shoreline shift. Ossian, you are a surveyor, a disgraced one. A credentialed one. Your seal is still valid. The disgrace is social, not official. Ossian was quiet a moment, then drew the folded map from his vest. I would need to backdate a survey notation that is not entirely legal. Neither is reclassifying a functioning village into an extraction camp, Sora said flatly. A long beat passed. Then Ossian smoothed the map on the table with both hands, took the chalk from behind his ear, and began to write. 5 sets of hands moved gradually toward the spreading paper. Jalle's last of all. It was a gathering, rather than a plan, something irreversible and alive. In the last amber light before the lanterns were lit, Tomo sat on the roof of the granary with his back to the square, looking out toward Pemlin Island. Invisible at this distance, just more sky. The cherry tree near the east gate dropped petals horizontally in the channel wind, and they blew between the islands like small, deliberate messages. Below him, he could hear Sora and Jalle in the square. Not the words, just the register. She, precise, he quieter than usual, the 2 of them making something work between them. He didn't leave through the back, Tomo thought, just that, he held it. At dusk, Sora and Jalle walked the cliff path circling the east edge of the village, the sky ahead of them moving through rose and copper and the first deep violet. She still carried her closed ledger, his hands stayed in his pockets. They walked not the way people walk when they are easy together, but the way people walk when something has broken open and neither of them yet knows what it becomes. At the path's highest point, they stopped. Below lay the village. Above stretched the relay sky. Between them stood about 18 inches and the weight of everything they had not said.